Hello everyone, this is Doug Ward. I'm going to talk today a bit about synthesis. And I think that most of you, let me get this down. Most of you are more familiar with analysis. And synthesis takes some time to get used to. The other thing that you're probably most familiar with is summary. They all have to do with similar things, but I'm going to give you a comparison here to cooking. I mean, it may seem odd, but the synthesis, analysis, and summary of information can really be related to cooking. Let's take a look. Let's see if I can persuade you of that. Because again, what I think you are used to is summary. And let's see if I can create a little pot here. I'm not a very good drawer, but I think I can give you the idea here that if you have a pan and you put it on the stove and you have heat underneath it of some kind, you know what happens to that, right? It starts to boil. The heat affects the liquid in it. The water vapor goes up and out, usually, unless you have it covered, and it distills what you have in there, whether it's soup, whether it's some sort of a syrup base. I'm thinking of cooking sugar in water. Think about that. How you could create a sort of a frosting with that. So that's summary. I mean, if you think of summary in those terms, I think it helps. It certainly helps me that you're really distilling the essence of something. You're concentrating it. You're explaining to people, here's what this is about. And that's really what you do when you boil something. You boil a liquid to distill the essence of it and to create something that's more potent. And that's what a summary does. An analysis, another thing that I think you're used to, or that you're most familiar with, and my guess is that with in other classes, I'm thinking of essays that you might write for English or science. You're asked to analyze something. Well, analyzing something is taking it apart. So we might take our same pot, and let's say that we had soup. And with that soup, let's look at it, and we're going to say we have all of these things, or we have this material that's in the soup, and we're going to try to decide what's in it. If we go in and then think about that, if you have something that you're tasting for the first time, and I'm using the example of soup, but it can be anything, and it might be an unusual flavor or an interesting flavor, and you start to think, well, what's in there? Well, I can taste, let's say that I'm baking something. I can taste cinnamon, I can taste sugar because I know it's sweet. Oh, that tastes like oats. It must have something like that in it. In soup, you might taste, okay, it has some kind of a broth in it. It has vegetables. It might have meat. It might have other things. So you're trying to break down those elements. You're trying to pull them out and separate them so that you can explain and identify what each one is. And that's analysis. We do that all the time. I just used, again, the example of food, but we do that with writing as well. You might be asked to analyze an essay. What is it that makes it work? What are the techniques behind it? Synthesis, on the other hand, is a lot like starting from scratch when you're cooking. And you pull together, I don't know, if you're going to cook something, let's say that we're going to bake, right? We're going to have our cookie sheet here, and I'm a horrible drawer, but we're going to bake cookies, and we're going to have those cookies on the sheet. Well, before we do that, we have to put our ingredients together. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to synthesize, really. We're going to synthesize all of these different things and to create something new, a different flavor in this case. So I just mentioned before, maybe we're going to have sugar, and I'm not going to try and draw sugar. We'll have flour. We might have oats. Maybe we'll have raisins. We'll have cinnamon. Baking powder. Each of those ingredients has a role in creating this new thing that we're trying to create. In this case, maybe muffins or cookies, something like that. But I think that's a pretty good analogy for what I'm asking you to do with synthesis. We do the same thing with information. In the case of baking, we're bringing all of these ingredients together in a new way. And when we're working with information, we do it with ideas. So we have an idea, and we have an idea, or we have a fact, or we have data, well, I'm going to call it again. I'm going to say information again. But we have all these different forms. We have all these different forms of information that come from various places. And we're going to put them together. Let me get a different color here. We're going to draw those together. We're going to put those together into some sort of a new idea, or an explanation of how they fit together, why they fit together. So I know I've got kind of a mishmash here, but that's really synthesis kind of boiled down. So we have summary. So think of summary as the distillation of something. We have analysis, which, like this, is really the teasing apart of the elements of something. And we have synthesis, and really what I want you to work toward is synthesis. And synthesis is difficult to do. It's really difficult to do because you're taking all these different ideas, and it doesn't have to be a lot of ideas always. But if you can bring together, say, the ideas from readings, from video, and from things that we've done in previous weeks, you start to see the world more clearly, because it really does open up your thinking process that, wow, there is a connection here to these things that I never thought about before. And that's really the goal as we're going through. The more that you can synthesize, the better. All of these components are important. Analysis is really important. Summary is critical in the world of journalism and in any kind of information. This is really the highest level, though, synthesis, and that's really the hardest, and that's what we'll be working on a lot. So I hope that helps.